I first noticed the sound on a Tuesday night, just after midnight. I remember the time because I had checked my phone to see how late it was, annoyed that I was still awake. The house was quiet in that familiar way, refrigerator humming, distant traffic, the occasional tick of the old wall clock in the living room. Then I heard it. It was faint. Almost nothing. A soft scraping sound, like fabric brushing against wood. I froze, holding my breath, listening. It came again, slower this time, followed by something that sounded like a sigh. I told myself it was the house settling. Old buildings make noise. Everyone knows that. I rolled over and forced myself to sleep. The next night, it happened again. This time, I was sure it wasn't the house. The sound came from inside the wall behind my bed. Not from the attic. Not from the floor. From inside the wall itself. It sounded like movement. I pressed my ear against the drywall, my heart pounding. There was silence for several seconds, just long enough for me to feel ridiculous. Then something shifted on the other side, slow and deliberate, like someone adjusting their position after realizing they weren't alone. I didn't sleep that night. Over the next week, the sounds became more frequent. Always late. Always subtle. Never loud enough to justify calling someone over or reporting it. Scratches. Breathing. Sometimes a dull thud, like a hand pressing against the inside of the wall and then pulling away. During the day, everything felt normal. Too normal. The walls looked the same. No cracks. No holes. No signs that anything was wrong. Friends came over and noticed nothing. I didn't tell them what I was hearing. I didn't want to sound paranoid. But at night, the house felt different. I started noticing patterns. The sounds only happened when the lights were off. Only when I was still. If I turned on a lamp or made noise, they stopped. As if whatever was inside the walls was listening too. One night, I whispered, "Hello?" The sound stopped instantly. That was when I realized I wasn't imagining it. I began sleeping on the couch, telling myself it was temporary. The wall behind the couch was shared with the hallway, thinner than the bedroom wall. That made the sounds clearer. Too clear. I could hear breathing. Slow. Careful. Controlled. Not animal breathing. Human. I installed cameras again. Same cheap setup as before. Living room. Hallway. Kitchen. I didn't bother with the bedroom. I didn't want to know what I'd see there. For several nights, nothing happened. Then, at 2:13 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected, hallway. I opened the feed. The hallway was dark, lit only by the nightlight near the bathroom. Everything looked normal. Then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The wall was moving. Not much. Just a slight bulge near the baseboard, like pressure being applied from the inside. It slowly receded, then returned somewhere else, higher up. I watched as the drywall flexed inward. Something was behind it. I grabbed my keys and left the house. I didn't even shut the door. I sat in my car, shaking, watching the camera feeds until my phone battery dropped to single digits. The police came the next morning. They searched the house. Tapped on the walls. Looked confused. One of them joked about mice. Another suggested raccoons. I told them about the breathing. They exchanged looks. Eventually, they left, telling me to call again if I heard anything louder. Something more definitive. That night, I heard knocking. 3 slow taps from inside the wall. Tap. 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 Then silence. I slept in my car. The next day, I tore part of the drywall open myself. Just a small section behind the couch. What I found made my knees go weak. There was a gap, a narrow crawl space running between the walls. Wider than it should have been. Tall enough for a person to crouch inside. The wood framing was scratched. Dark smudges marked the beams. The smell hit me immediately, sweat, old fabric, human presence. Someone had been there. I followed the crawl space with a flashlight. It ran through most of the house, connecting rooms silently. Whoever built the house had left just enough space between the walls for wiring and plumbing. Someone else had repurposed it. There were footprints in the dust. Bare footprints. I found food wrappers. Bottles. A blanket folded carefully in one corner. A small pile of my things, missing socks, a phone charger, a notebook I thought I'd lost months earlier. And then I found the hole. A small cutout section of drywall behind my bedroom wall. Just large enough for an eye. It was positioned perfectly. directly facing my bed. I moved out that day. I didn't go back at night. I didn't pack properly. I took what I could and left everything else behind. The police returned and searched again. This time, they took it seriously. They found more evidence. Signs that someone had been living inside the walls for months. Maybe longer. But they didn't find the person. They told me it was rare, but not unheard of. Squatters. Frogging. People who learn houses the way others learn habits. Quietly. Patiently. I asked how someone could live that close to another person without being noticed. One officer shrugged and said, "Most people don't expect it." I thought it was over. It wasn't. Weeks later, settled into a new apartment, I started hearing the sounds again. At first, I told myself it was trauma. Memory replaying itself. But then I heard breathing. Slow. Familiar. From inside the wall. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I just stood there with my ear against the wall, my breath shallow, my mind trying to convince my body that what I was hearing wasn't real. The wall was cold against my cheek. The breathing on the other side was steady, deliberate, like whoever, or whatever, was there knew I was listening. Then it stopped. Not abruptly. Slowly. As if they were choosing to stop. I pulled away from the wall and backed up until my shoulders hit the opposite side of the hallway. My apartment felt smaller than it had an hour ago. The air felt thicker, harder to breathe. I checked every room, every corner, every closet. Nothing. No movement. No sounds. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch with all the lights on, staring at the walls like they might blink. For the next few days, the sounds didn't return. That almost made it worse. Silence gives you room to imagine. It lets your fear grow legs and walk around unchecked. I started recording audio at night, placing my phone against the walls, hoping to capture something concrete. Every morning, I'd listen back. Mostly static. Occasionally a faint tap or scrape that could have been anything. But I knew. I started noticing other things. My shoes were no longer where I left them. Just slightly off. Turned at a different angle. The bathroom cabinet mirror once had a smudge on it at eye level, higher than mine. I wiped it away, my hands shaking, and tried to tell myself it was old. That it had always been there. The walls began to feel less like barriers and more like thin skin. One night, I woke up to a whisper. It wasn't a word. Just air moving, shaped by mouth that was too close to the wall behind my bed. I lay perfectly still, afraid that even breathing too loudly would give me away. My phone was on the nightstand, screen dark, camera app open from earlier. I reached for it slowly and turned on the flashlight. The whisper stopped. I stayed frozen for several minutes, light trained on the blank wall, waiting for something, anything, to happen. Nothing did. Eventually, exhaustion won. I fell asleep without realizing it. The next morning, I found scratches on the baseboard, fresh ones. Thin. Vertical. Like fingernails dragged slowly along the wood. That was when I realized something I hadn't considered before. Whatever was inside the walls wasn't just hiding. It was moving. I contacted the landlord. Told him everything. He came by with a maintenance guy who knocked on the walls, crawled into the attic, shook his head, and said everything looked normal. Old buildings settle. Pipes expand. Animals get in sometimes. Animals don't whisper. That night, the knocking returned. Not 3 taps this time. 5. Slow. Evenly spaced. Like a signal. I stood in the middle of the room, phone in hand, recording. "I know you're there," I said quietly. My voice sounded weak, unfamiliar. "You need to leave." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the wall behind me vibrated slightly. Something shifted inside it. And I heard a soft sound that made my stomach twist. Laughter. Not loud. Not manic. Just a low, breathy chuckle, muffled by layers of drywall and insulation. Like it was meant only for me. I left the apartment that night and didn't come back for 2 days. When I did return, with a friend, I found something waiting for me. On the kitchen counter was a note. Plain paper. Folded once. "You hear better now." I moved again. New city. New apartment. New start. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I deleted social media. Changed my number. I lived out of boxes for weeks, afraid that settling in would somehow invite it back. For a while, it worked. No sounds. No movement. No signs. I almost started believing I'd escaped. Until one night, while lying in bed, I heard something that shattered that hope completely. My name. Spoken softly. From inside the wall.